All right. Thanks very much, Rowan, and thanks for having me, and thanks for sticking around for the last session of today. I promise that we'll try and make it as interesting as possible. I'm sure that there'll be plenty of stuff that we talk about today, which are things you haven't perhaps thought about or heard about, and that we should certainly hope to enlighten you. So, as Rowan mentioned, my talk this afternoon will focus largely on the Oz Minerals Explora Challenge, which is an incredibly exciting initiative where we've had a lot of data open to the public for a number of months. I'm pretty sure this is Australia's largest ever crowdsourcing competition across any industry. Largest amount of data and largest amount of prize money with $1 million. So we're going to talk about some of the results that came out of that. Now, we haven't actually announced the final results. That's next Friday, so you can please tune into that. We're going to talk about some of the outcomes that we are able to share. And also, I'm going to kind of start to introduce some new concepts about what does this fundamentally mean about how we approach exploration, and how can we start to strategically unlock more value in unique and different ways which we haven't done before, which can be utilized through this concept of crowdsourcing. So, what's the problem we're trying to solve really with this? We all know we need to increase our discovery rate. That's a no-brainer. But what does that mean for the exploration geologist, that's that practitioner that gets asked by their exploration manager or their managing director to do that? And then we kind of start to think about targets, and how do we generate targets? Now you could easily say, you could just throw some darts at a map, and some people might claim that that might be a bit more effective than geologists, but that would be mean. But it's a fundamental question. It's a really difficult question to answer. How do you actually say how confident you are in your target to produce economic mineralization? And it's something that geologists really struggle with. So we ask ourselves questions like, are we using the right data? Are we using enough data? Are we using the right experts? Are we applying the right model? Are we placing our bets on the right targets? So what I'm going to talk about today is how the approach that Oz has taken is actually enabling us to increase the confidence that we have in the targets that we generate, so enabling us to make better bets, which is really important for how we think about investing in exploration in the future. So I'm a geologist, by the way, so the few things that I say, I'm allowed to say them. So geologists love bias. We're really biased. We usually say the term expertise rather than bias, but essentially it is kind of the same. And it's really important that we are biased because it allows us to have focus. Any geologists in the audience that have gone and applied for jobs will have read the descriptions like must have minimum 5 to 8 years experience in Archean gold, specifically in the gold fields, as an example. And that is going to create a lot of bias in our thinking. And we need it because it helps us explore for specific things. It helps us understand the economics behind certain ore bodies and how to develop those projects. So it's really important. But often we probably don't think about the value that might be left on the table by having a very constrained point of view. So what does that mean in the sense of actually our exploration workflow? So geology at the bottom here, that's just the rocks, right? And we need something to explain them because they're really complicated, and ore deposits are pretty complex things to describe. So we developed deposit models to describe mineralization, and all geologists have ones that they prefer, ones that they like more than others. And we use these deposit models to dictate the types of data that we collect, how we interpret that data, and then ultimately how we generate targets. And so then when we do that with the kind of small exploration teams that we typically have, we're kind of introducing bias and uncertainty at every single level because we're constraining our thinking. Now, whether we have a fundamental geological or an analytical data science approach, we can still often be quite constrained. So even when we typically see people now looking to apply data science, and I am going to talk about this in outcomes from Explora as well, if we apply it at those later stages with interpretation, we still have developed a lot of bias before we get there in the data that we've collected. So we really need to think about what it means to really think outside the box in this process. So we could do this instead, and what I'm trying to illustrate here is that we could fundamentally take lots of different independent models and independent approaches from different thinking and potentially combine all of those outcomes. And this is essentially what Oz have been able to do, and I'll explain this in a bit more context so it kind of starts to make sense to you, I hope. But the idea really being that by being independent and distributed and getting diverse opinions, combining those back, we're able to increase the confidence in the targets that we generate. But we can't really do this with internal teams, and this is where the crowd really comes in, because it's just not possible with the limited internal resources we have to do that. So the Explora Challenge is the case study that we'll go through to kind of explain this concept. And I do really want to recognize the team at Oz here. It is amazing to see these types of initiatives in industry, and it's no small feat to convince your board and convince your management team to release all of your private exploration data around one of your biggest assets. So, you know, that stuff doesn't just happen overnight. There's a lot of work and effort that goes into changing that mindset and recognizing value in a different way. And for Oz, what they realized is that because they have been really focused with this exploration model around this area, there's potential that that bias has meant that there could be things locked in that data, additional value locked in that data, which their own internal team may not have recognized. So there's a huge opportunity by putting data out to the public to get different experts and different opinions around what targets may be generated. So the Explora Challenge ran from February this year to May with a $1 million prize pool. Oz have committed to drilling the outcomes of this year to test some of those targets that come out. And what we really tried to do with this competition was to incentivize data scientists as well as geologists and people from different disciplines to come and apply their skills in a unique and different way to this fundamental challenge that we have in exploration. So just a little bit more context. So the Explora Challenge was around the Mount Woods project, which is a really, really large tenement package around the Prominent Hill Mine in South Australia, iron oxide copper gold, as I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with. So the participants had access to the whole exploration data set that Oz had collected, which was over 5 terabytes for that project. And the challenge was simple enough: use the data to predict the location of economic mineralization of any kind in that tenement package. So just really briefly, what was in the data? So fairly standard exploration data set, but very large. High concentration of geophysics because the majority of the tenement package is undercover. So these are the kind of things that the participants had access to. So what actually kind of happened in the challenge itself? So that 5 terabytes of data, I wanted to highlight here that it was instantly available online. It's really only in the last couple of years that we've actually been able to share this amount of data so quickly and so securely in such a short time frame. So the tech and that cloud platform has really enabled people to start sharing data more freely. We had thousands of people from over 60 countries download and work on that data from many, many different disciplines, and you can see the pictures of some of the teams that participated in the competition there. So why does this approach work, and how is it fundamentally different? By having open and accessible data, you're creating a condition where you can get multiple results developed in parallel. This is something that you really can't do internally. So you have to be open to achieve that. Not only that, but then you're also able to get multiple independent approaches. So you're reducing this groupthink and you're reducing bias. And what this enables you to do is develop this concept of consensus through confidence in the targets you're getting. So as an example, if you think about, you apply a machine learning model to your exploration data and it generates some targets. How confident are you that those targets are valid? Probably not that confident right now with machine learning. A lot of people feel like it's a little bit of a black box. But what if you had 10 different machine learning models and 10 exploration models all predict the same target? Then you're feeling a lot more confident that that target is high quality and more likely to reap rewards for you. And that's what Oz really have been able to do through the Explora Challenge, which is a really key differentiator of this approach. You can bring together tens, hundreds of different models into one consensus model and see which different approaches are creating different targets in different areas of your ground. So that is really, really unique. And you're able to do it effectively because of this diversity and independence of the people that are taking part through the crowd. Now, there are some really excellent bonuses that go with this. And the reason I didn't put these first is I think that ultimately, going back to how I opened this, we want to increase confidence in our targets. If we work faster and we get new knowledge and we get new workflows, that's also a benefit. But ultimately, we want to be able to say that with confidence and qualitatively, that we have more chance of success with the targets. But certainly speed, new knowledge and new workflows and reduced costs are a very attractive part of this approach as well. I'll talk about that a bit more in the results. So yeah, this is what we did through the Explora challenge. So what were the outcomes? So as I said, we can't share all the outcomes because we are announcing the winners of the competition next Friday, so please tune in. But through this challenge, Oz have already been able to assess all the different workflows that came out. So we developed multiple approaches never imagined before internally. And when I say never imagined, what I mean is we can say that we want to use machine learning, but we don't know exactly what that looks like. And we can't imagine how that integrates necessarily every time. So the concept that was delivered through this challenge and all the submissions that came forward were around how do we integrate different machine learning and data science approaches with geological and exploration workflows. So the uniqueness of all these different approaches was that combination. And what that resulted in was in multiple new ways of extracting data, fusing data, and analyzing large amounts of data sets. And then we come to this consensus and the total target outcome, which ultimately is what we're trying to achieve here. So the competition generated over 400 targets, some of them new, and some of them already known to the team in Oz Minerals. But now Oz can combine all of those targets together and can understand which approaches, whether it be machine learning dominant or traditional geology dominant structural approaches, which ones produce which targets, which ones agree and which ones don't. So you can have this really comprehensive model and you can apply these different levels of confidence based on which different models are predicting what. So because everyone wants to know about data science, I did feel like we wanted to share a little bit here. So multidisciplinary teams are the best. That's kind of a no-brainer, but we did want to stick it in here. You don't want to try and do machine learning without your geologists. What data science really does enable is the use of really large-scale data sets. So what we saw through this competition was a really a high rate of success of using Australia, statewide, national, and global data sets and pulling them in to then predict on a local scale. And the other thing with machine learning is the importance that it's explainable and interpretable. So the teams that submitted through this challenge needed to explain the outcomes of their machine learning models, which is really important for geologists to be able to use them. And lastly, geoscience data is not super friendly for data scientists, and we can talk more about that later around how we got data scientists to compete in this competition, but typically, even if our geoscience data is really high quality, it's still difficult to understand. So this is a slightly left field, but I wanted to quickly put this slide up here because I know lots of people are interested in this space. And so this is a snapshot of some of the startups that are working using machine learning in exploration right now. It's an incredibly active space, and it's moving fast. So these are definitely some companies to keep an eye on. The one in the middle there, Cobalt Metals, particularly interesting because this isn't just about technology, it's about a change in investment environment. So Cobalt Metals' primary investment comes from Bill Gates' breakthrough energy ventures. So we're now seeing key players in Silicon Valley investing in mineral exploration and machine learning. So what are our key takeaways? Consensus equals confidence. So search for consensus and don't search for the one best model. Open and accessible data creates the environment where you can achieve this, and it's really difficult to do it in another way. Data scientists and geologists should work together. And lastly, on the time thing, in just 3 months, through using the crowd, Oz were able to get 40 models on their data. Internally, just think about the time that it would take you to do that if you ever chose to, but fundamentally, it's just a totally new approach to do something much faster and much cheaper as well. So thank you very much. Please tune into the live stream announcement next Friday for the winners of Explora. And yeah, I'll be around later to chat further. Thank you.